Blind Abilities presents a feature interview with Joey Stuckey.
Macon's music ambassador wants you to take this Saturday to enjoy life. Joey Stuckey's holding his second annual Alive Day Festival this Saturday. The festival will include 8 musical performers, including Stuckey.
Whereas in 2017, Joey Stuckey is holding the first ever Alive Day celebration. Now, therefore, on Robert A.B. Records, do hereby proclaim September the 29th, 2017 is Joey Stuckey's Alive Day. And to thank him for his
Good morning and welcome
many
to 41 Today. I'm Shelby Coates, and local musician and producer Joey Stuckey is here. He has an amazing story and a new album that's coming out tomorrow, and he's here to tell us all about it.
Hi, I'm producer Joey Stuckey. I like to live a life of intention where I have a core set of values and beliefs and ideals, and everything I do flows from that basic core concept. Music is something that can inspire and heal and engage and teach. I play jazz, I play blues, I play country, I play rock, I play heavy metal, I play classical. Whatever it is, I just love good music.
Joey talks about his love for music and his calling to perform and produce.
Man, part of being human is this compulsion we have to tell stories. Music's the thing that works best for me. As a blind person, it's just what I connect to the most.
Our own Jeff Thompson sat down with Joey and talked about his music, his recording studio,
I knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life when I was 15 years old.
his blindness,
Max was like, what, are you blind or something? I was like, yeah.
and his advice for young musicians.
Playing to 80,000 people, I'm sure that's a great thrill. My mind's at doing the best I can do, delivering that to people that care about what I do and like it, and making a good enough living that I'm not going to end up in a van down by the river.
So let's join Jeff and his guest, Joey Stuckey, the musician, the songwriter, the sound engineer and producer. Oh, and a bit of a bionic man.
In my mind, it's like I look like James Bond. You know, in my mind, I just, oh yeah, that's a bullet wound, that's a knife wound. So if anybody ever says, wow, where'd you get that scar? Oh, sword fight. I'm like a swashbuckler.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson, and in the studio today, we have a musician, a producer, somewhat the bionic man. We got Joey Stuckey. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Glad to be with you today.
Joey, I went to your website and I was looking at your awards page, and you got Jazz Player of the Year, Guitarist. There was one that was Violence or something.
Yeah, Victory Over Violence.
Yeah. What a widespread amount of awards you have.
Well, you know, I'll tell you something. My wife actually has a kind of a funny thing that she says. She says, it's good that you can't see, because if you could, I wouldn't be able to keep up with you. And I kind of like that. I have I wouldn't say I have a restless spirit, but I have a great curiosity about the universe and about life and about other people's stories. And I have a great desire to be part of those things. I want to be part of the wider world. I want to do things that matter. When I do my inspirational talks, and even when I teach my students, one of the things that I really sort of focus on is this idea of living a life of intention. And that's something I think is really important. And so I like to be very involved in things that I think matter and things that I think make a difference. So I like to live a life of intention where I have, you know, a core set of values and beliefs and ideals, and everything I do flows from that basic core concept or that basic core intention. The reason I'm blind is from a brain tumor. So for me, being part of brain tumor awareness, trying to raise money for brain tumor research, those things matter. I believe music's the most powerful tool I can wield for positive change. So with the Victory Over Violence Award, that was basically about joining some other people from different walks of life to talk about trying to, you know, decrease violence as a solution. And I think music's a really powerful way to do that. That's the way I know how to contribute. Other people do it, you know, obviously through different ways. So that particular organization wanted to honor me with that award because they felt like what I was doing was helping to decrease violence through the power of music and engaging people through that power. You know, music for me, you were saying there's a lot of different awards, you know, from jazz artists to, you know, different types of musical awards. I really don't like the idea of limiting music because it's this thing that is so powerful. It has no boundaries. So music is something that can inspire and heal and engage and teach and all these wonderful things. I play jazz, I play blues, I play country, I play rock, I play heavy metal, I play classical. You know, whatever it is, I just love good music. Unfortunately, defining music in sort of stylistic terms or genre terms is sort of a necessary evil when it comes down to, you know, making a living at the end of the day. And as a producer and a session musician, I play on a lot of different people's records. So that's one way that I'm able to fulfill all these different desires and interests. And I sort of paint with a different brush. When I'm playing music for me, I just do what I do. And I don't really worry about it. And there are people that are going to like it, and there are people that aren't, and all that's fine. That's kind of a long-winded answer to your comment. But yeah, I love to be engaged.
Yeah, and for the holidays, they can even play Santa that plays guitar.
You can't keep your mistletoe. I can't drive a brand new car. No white Christmas with all that snow. I want a Santa that plays guitar.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing. Everybody I know, no matter what their particular Christmas experience is, whether they even celebrate Christmas, maybe they celebrate Hanukkah instead or whatever, but everyone I know loves Christmas songs. I think what's so cool about Christmas songs is that there's such a breadth of things that can be incorporated. Some Christmas songs are really silly, and those are probably my favorite. Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, Christmas at Ground Zero with Weird Al, All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth.
Santa Got a DWI. Do you remember Sherwin Linton?
I haven't heard that one.
Sherwin Linton did it about 15 years ago.
He better be careful, because if he gets more than two, might have to do some prison time. And of course, I love the serious stuff too. I love the sacred tunes like, Hark the Herald, Oh Holy Night, and all these different things. And I love the fun ones like, Jingle Bell Rock, and all these. There's so many wonderful songs and so many wonderful artists. And almost every artist of any longevity, any artist that sticks around for any length of time, at some point does a Christmas record. I mean, everybody from Weezer to, Straight No Chaser,
Bob Dylan,
to Frank Sinatra. Yeah, I mean, all these people have Christmas records. And why? Because it's just such a fun thing to do. The reason this came about, my current record for 2019 was released in March of this year. It's called In the Shadow of the Sun. And we've been touring our butts off.
Great album. Great album.
But thank you, sir. I appreciate that, because it was a lot of fun. I've never paid for studio time in my life because I've always owned my own studio. But we were on tour in Memphis, Tennessee, and we had a day off. And we said, let's go tour Sun Studio and check that out, where Elvis and Roy Orbison and Johnny Cash and all these guys did some of their early records in the 50s and 60s. Come to find out, you could actually record there. The studio is a museum from 10 to 6. And then from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., it's a studio, and they're basically recording things there the same way they did back in the 60s. It's everybody in one room, just a handful of microphones. I was like, let's do this just for fun. We're just going to capture the sound of the group as it is. We'll just do it for fun. And there was no big deal. I got the tracks home to my place. I was like, this is pretty good. We should probably make a record out of this. I didn't have an intention to do 2 records in 1 year, but my agent called me and said, hey, do you have any Christmas music? Because I've got some people here looking for some Christmas songs for a project. And I was like, well, no, I don't. But being as I own my own studio, I can carve out some time to make that happen. And then a week later, a music supervisor friend of mine who actually is nominated for a Grammy this year for a spoken word record he did, he called me and said the same thing. And so I recorded 3 songs. I recorded the song that I wrote, first Christmas song I've ever written, Santa That Plays Guitar, which is really, really silly. And then I recorded Let It Snow and Jingle Bells, and I sent those out. I was not intending to release them to the public. They were just there for film and TV placement and stuff like that. And people were just really enjoying it. And everybody's like, well, does he have more? Does he have more? Does he have more? And I realized with the time that I have, I could probably record 3 more songs. I recorded Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, Oh Holy Night, and Go Tell It on the Mountain.
A weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new.
Was able to get the CDs pressed and shipped, and I've done 2 radio campaigns, one for North America and one for the EU and UK. So every year for about 6 weeks, the radio stations want Christmas music and retail outlets want Christmas music and Hallmark Channel needs Christmas music. So it is actually a very smart business decision long term. I told my wife, I'm trying to write the dumbest thing that I possibly can, because I'm convinced the minute I write something that's so stupid is the minute that I'll become rich.
Well, I don't think it's so silly, because you actually, in the song, you're asking to have Santa join you and the boys in the band.
Hey, Nestor, what's going on, man?
Hey, Joey, what's up, man? What are you doing?
Oh, hang on 1 second. Okay. I'll just send an email to Santa.
You can email Santa?
Yeah. You can email Santa. Yeah.
God.
elf@gmail.com.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of, you got. You don't tell them what you want. You can't get that.
All right, let me get. So what are you asking for?
Well, I'll tell you, it's something pretty special. Not a lot of people have probably thought about this. So let me just sit down and go hand me that guitar.
Okay,
I will tell you all about it.
Here you go. Okay, there you go.
That would be really cool.
That's true.
Have a guest guitar dressed up as Santa on tour.
I'll dress up as anything once. I'll tell you, that would be pretty funny. I'd prefer to ask, the real Santa to come and play. I've got the roly-poly part going, but I don't know that I could grow a beard. That impressive.
When you're given another day, you don't take that for granted. It was life-threatening surgery, but I survived it. And although the brain tumor left me blind, I am blessed to be alive and part of a vibrant and historic music community. Joey Stuckey Alive Day has food and free music from performers all across the great state of Georgia on September 29th in 3rd Street Park in beautiful downtown Macon-Bibb.
When you mentioned Macon, that's where the Joey Stuckey Music Festival is held.
That is right. Yeah. So going kind of back to my early days, when I was about 18 months old, my mom felt like there was something not quite right. I seemed not to be feeling well. I seemed to have a little bit of trouble, tracking her movements, navigating the room, walking through the room, stuff like that. And she felt there was something not right. So she took me to the doctor a couple of times, actually. And they just said, oh, you're an overprotective mother, go home, bake cookies, everything's fine. So then my dad had me by the hand and he let go literally for about 15 seconds. And I just sort of stepped and fell down a flight of 30 stairs. And apparently I'm okay. Apparently my head's pretty hard.
We'll see by the end of the podcast. We'll find out.
Well, yes, I'll let you guys decide. You can talk amongst yourselves. They rushed to the hospital and they're like, oh, I think this kid's blind. And so then they're like, okay, he has a brain tumor. And so the tumor was growing so fast that it basically was ripping out wiring from the inside. So my eyeballs are fine. It's just that the brain tumor just crushed the optic nerves and destroyed them. It also destroyed my sense of smell. I don't have any adrenal gland function. I don't have any thyroid function. So my entire endocrine system is basically just gone. There isn't one. They decided that they were going to have to do surgery and told my parents, look, we know he's not going to live if we don't do surgery. If we do surgery, he's probably not going to live. Or if he does, he won't walk or talk. They said, it's going to be about a 9-hour surgery. And so they came out in like 3 hours. The surgeon told my parents, like, look, I don't really know how to explain it except to say that I feel like a higher power took hold of my hands and I just lifted the tumor out. I spent 4 months in ICU after the surgery, and I still have some health challenges that I struggle with, even today. But the amazing thing about my parents, they somehow just knew how to instinctually just keep me focused on being positive and happy. You can imagine that this brain tumor, all this surgery, all this trauma. My parents said to me on September 29th, which is the day that I beat the odds and lived, instead of saying, this is a day that we'll dread, this is the day you almost died. No. This is the day we got our son back. This is the day that you beat the odds. This is the day you lived. And that is a critical difference. It's not just semantics. It's philosophical. We called it my Alive Day. We would quietly celebrate it. Just acknowledge the day, acknowledge what it meant to us. In 2017, I was just thinking about things and thinking about how technology is amazing and I love it. And as a blind person, we have more accessibility than ever before. But I feel like with technology and with social media and with the way our world's turning, that there's also a bit of a disconnect. There's not the sense of neighborliness like there used to be. There seems to be less sense of community. So I wanted to take Alive Day and bring it into a broader context and say, look, this is a day of positivity. This is a day of reuniting with our loved ones, with our community, to become neighbors again, and to revel in the joy of life and music. That's why we started the Alive Day Festival. I mean, it costs about $10,000 to put the thing on, because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right, whether I have the money or not. So usually I end up paying for about half of it, get sponsors to pay for about half of it. The first festival, which was in 2017, I just invited friends that were great musicians and had good hearts and good spirits. and their spirit and their goodness shined through what they did. I couldn't pay anybody to play. Well, we had such a great success with it, and so many people came out for the first one that the second one was even better, and it was really wonderful. Unfortunately, I had to have a shoulder replacement at the end of 2018, and I just couldn't really deal with putting together the festival for this year. So I had to just focus on getting well from that shoulder replacement, and it was a much bigger ordeal than I expected. Good news is my arm works again, and I'm pain-free, and I've got 100% parity between both arms. So, what I can do with the left arm, I can do with the right arm. So it all worked out in the end, but it was a much longer recovery period than I expected, and I just couldn't bring it about.
That's part of the Bionic Man part that I put in the introduction. It's not just the shoulder. You got metal throughout.
I do. I consider myself what's called a 1%er. So it's like, if it's going to happen, I'm going to be the guy that it happens to. And I mean that not in a bitter way. My thing is, if I can walk through the fire and come out the other side able to function and hopefully a little bit kinder and wiser, then I'm okay with that. Actually, my only prayer that I ever pray, the thing that I always sort of have in my heart and my mind, is progress. If I'm making strides in the right direction, I'm content with that. If I'm not making strides in the right direction, or I'm not making progress, that's when I'm not super happy.
Bring sunny weather. There ain't nothing we can't figure out. When I'm holding her, darling, there's no doubt. I can see this lasting forever.
Now, your studio, Shadow Sound Studio, that's where your love of music really comes in, right?
My parents always had music as a big part of our home. My dad, and I don't use this word in a derogatory sense, but my dad was an amateur musician. And what I just mean by that is he didn't make a living playing music. It's not a critique on skill. He played as a teenager in a band and everything. My mother, who was the preacher's daughter in that town, was very into sacred music. And also, my mom always loved classical music, opera, stuff like that. So on one side, you have my dad playing stuff like Hank Williams and Loretta Lynn and George Jones and all that kind of stuff. And then my mom's playing the Magic Flute and Onward Christian Soldiers. You know what I mean? So you have
quite the diversity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so music was always a very important part of our household. When I was 13 years old, I ended up having pneumonia really bad, and I had to stay cooped up in the house the entire summer. On public radio, there was a guy there named Rob Thomas, and he was a DJ that played old-time radio shows from midnight to 3 a.m. So he played like the Lone Ranger, and he played like the Shadow, Dimension
knows.
X. And then, of course, there were some modern ones, too, that your listeners probably wouldn't know. Duck's Breath, and played at Fire Sign Theater and all these
Fire
things.
Sign Theater, Mick Danger.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Don't crush that door for me with the pliers. I mean, my favorite thing about Fire Sign is, do you remember Organ Leroy? There's this thing where they're doing a church service and they're saying, it's Organ Leroy at his organ. And he sings this line, oh, blinding light, oh, light that blind, look out for me, I cannot see. And then you hear him fall off the stage.
That reminds me of Hank Williams' song, I Saw the Light. A blind man's in that song,
I saw the light, absolutely. Not so much, Hank. The point, though, is that I'm like, wait a minute. Here are stories being told with music, sound effects, and dialogue. And for a blind person, it was just a revelation. So as soon as I was healthy enough, I went to Radio Shack and I grabbed some very cheap microphones and mixers and literally just started going, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And I called this guy, Rob Thomas, at the radio station. I'm like, hey, I love what you're doing. And he came over to visit me and became a friend and showed me what he knew about recording, which wasn't tons, but it was enough to put me in the right direction. And then later, when I got to Macon, Rob Thomas was friends with the head of the Museum of Arts and Sciences here in our hometown, and he was complaining about the sound quality in their planetarium. And Rob said, hey, I know this kid that's pretty sharp. You ought to get him to come do your sound work for your planetarium. And so they did. That was my first job I ever had when I was 15. And then from there, what happened was there were teenagers there like 16, 18, 20, working part-time jobs. A lot of them were very artistically inclined and had bands. I'm like, hey, we understand you got some recording equipment. My band needs a demo. Would you record a demo for us? Yeah, sure, man. Come on over. And so that's how my business in the studio was born. But when that first garage band came over and they recorded a song they'd written, I was like, oh my God, I can do this. music, it just woke something up in me. I was like, music is the vehicle that I'm going to tell my story through. It's how I'm going to understand my place in the universe. And if God willing, is how I'm going to help other people to find their place and to find their voice. Man, part of being human is this compulsion we have to tell stories. Painting is a great way to tell stories, sculpture, dance, all those things are wonderful, but music's the thing that works best for me as a blind person. It's just what I connect to the most. I knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life when I was 15 years old, and I started my studio business, and I thought, well, as a musician, you need to tour, but as a kid, you can't really do that. And also, I have a real strong support network here. I had things working real well. My limitations were minimized. I said, what would be the best way for me to do music, but to have people want to come to me, not me go to them? Studio. The studio happened very organically. I had the recording equipment. It's what I wanted to do. And the thing is, I graduated from high school when I was 14, and I started college when I was 16. As smart as I was, the book sense smart, there were some things I really could not have imagined. I could not imagine how I would make it work, trying to travel up and down with the band. And I just, now, of course, I know how to do that. I know how to make it work. But when I was young, I just couldn't. But the great thing about the studio is, and I've worked with some famous people, and I'm honored by that, and I'm excited by that. But the thing that I love best, actually, is when there's a new artist that's found their voice enough that they have the ability to make a living playing music, and they haven't made a record yet, and I get to help them on that first journey, and I get to give them that first experience and make sure that it's a positive experience full of teachable moments, so that when they leave me with that first record, I've given them tools that they'll be able to use for the rest of their career, and they'll be able to take what I've given them and grow and continue to do amazing things. I teach music technology and music business for 2 universities here in town. The studio is where my heart is in a big way, because I think of it as a place to nurture talent and nurture good habits and to foster education.
Hi, I'm producer Joey Stuckey, and this is my Shadow Sound Studio.
Anybody that starts looking you up on YouTube or on the internet, they're going to find the word shadow pretty prevalent in there. You got Shadow Sound Studio, and then I noticed on your guitar, it's a Shadowcaster. I was like, yeah, explain that one.
Early on, I wrote 2 songs. One of them was Take a Walk in the Shadows, and the other one was a song called Mr. Mooney. And I knew I had something with Mr. Mooney because it made all the girls cry.
Mr. Mooney, talk to me. I just want to say I'm sorry. May she always rest in peace. I'd give my life if I could ease.
I was like, now I'm successful. I'm making the girls cry. To know that you were able to get in there and pluck somebody's heartstrings, I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. But this song, Take a Walk in the Shadows, to understand what it's really like to be blind is a hard concept. And I found that shadow was a fairly easy way to get the basic concept across. Most people think about a blind person, they go, oh, it must be awful walking around in darkness all the time. But that is actually not anywhere near what it's like, because when you see darkness, that's your eyes perceiving the absence of light. So the shadow illusion is one that I've used sort of as a branding thing. Partly it helps to explain a little bit about what being blind is kind of like. I found that the shadow moniker is a good branding tool. That wasn't a conscious thought at first. But over the years, I realized that, I like the shadow moniker because it gives sort of a nod and a wink to the fact that I'm approaching things as a blind musician. And honestly, recording music is about the sound. And that is really where the focus should be. I do think as a blind recording engineer, producer, musician, I do think I have a unique perspective. Having a blind guy do your record is a pretty good idea, because you want someone who is naturally suited to accomplish the task. And it's a bit of a cliche, but I am naturally suited to do music because, all the really important stuff I can do. And as my ears are my primary sense, and that's really what you kind of need if you're mixing a record, that works out to everyone's advantage. It's kind of like I tell my wife's a midwife. And I've always thought to myself, why would a woman want a man to deliver their baby? Because a man will never know what it's like to give birth. Seems to me it make much better sense to have a woman taking care of you.
Thank goodness.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. If you're making music, a blind guy would not be a bad resource. So the shadow thing is kind of, part of that whole thing. When I got my second custom guitar that I had made by my luthier that handles all my instruments, I don't just trust my instruments with just anybody. And so he made me a custom guitar. And then another gentleman made me a custom acoustic guitar, which I call the Bandit. He got named the guitars. So I have one called the Bandit. Then I've got this thing, the Shadowcaster. Of course, the studio, Shadow Sound Studio. And album-wise, we had Take a Walk in the Shadows, my first record. And then later, I had an album called The Shadow Sound, which is a different record, kind of a best of, remastered, reissued album that I did for a label. It was actually the same label that had Steven Seagal. Who knew Steven Seagal was not only an action hero, but a blues guitar player? I'm not on that label anymore, but we did that record kind of as a thing to kind of jumpstart our career on that label.
And your latest album, Shadow of the Sun.
Yeah, and that, of course, we recorded at Sun Studios, and then we recorded at Shadow Sound Studio. So we kind of put them together.
It's a great album. I just went on to your website and purchased In the Shadow of the Sun on vinyl. That's a pretty good deal.
Let me tell you something. As a blind guy, I have never been a big vinyl fan because as a kid, I would get the record home, and I'd open it up, and then I want to go back and hear my favorite songs, right? And so me trying to find the needles, oh my God.
The groove,
I must have bought Michael Jackson's Thriller record like 6 times over because I kept scratching it up.
No wonder it sold so many.
I bet it was all Joey Stuckey. But vinyl does have a groove and a feel to it and this ambiance. And this record, because of the way it was recorded at Sun Studio in this old school banner, we just felt like it would be wrong not to offer it on vinyl. And I was so excited when I got the first test press of the vinyl. I went out and bought a turntable. I didn't have one. And man, it was everything I wanted it to be. It sounded just like I had imagined it would sound in my mind. And it was just everything I wanted it to be. And I was so thrilled to be able to sit there for 45 minutes and, just hear all these things that I wanted to hear happen on the vinyl. So if you've got a turntable and you like that, it's worth the experience. Surprisingly, we've actually sold a lot of these on the road. I was super surprised because vinyl takes up a lot of space in the van. And, we have a van and a trailer.
Just be glad they're not 78s.
Well, oh my God, that'd be terrible. It's one of those things you have to very carefully think about, what you pack. You've got a van and a trailer. That's got to hold all your clothes, all your instruments, all your PA, all your merch, all your business tools like your laptop, and it's got to hold everything comfortably. Because if you're on the road for 6 weeks or whatever, you are living in that vehicle.
I collect vinyl records. I did back in the day, and I got probably 1,000 records. And when I saw you had the vinyl one there, I had just gotten a new turntable. Not a new one. It's 40 years old, but it's all redone.
Oh, wow.
It's just fun to have the old vinyl. Like you said, in the early days, kids used to come over and you used to listen. You used to enjoy it, and you used to read the cover or pass the cover around and look at it and stuff like that. So I'm excited because this is going right in my rack.
I am so honored by that because that means a lot to me. If it's okay with you, I'll sign it to you if that's good to you.
Hey.
And obviously it depends on the genre of music. I am less a fan of classical music on vinyl. There's something in the recording we call signal to noise ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the signal to noise ratio is not translated as well with classical music. And the reason is that classical music has such a high dynamic. So it has moments of extremely quiet pieces and extremely loud pieces. Classical musicians are very resistant to mastering. They're very resistant to compression. And so I tend to think that classical doesn't work super well on vinyl. But like Miles Davis, I have Kind of Blue on vinyl. I tell my students, and I say this jokingly, it's not really true, or at least I don't think it is. As far as I know, I made this up. But I tell my kids, listen to how much space there is between Miles when he plays a line. He lets that line just soak into you. He lets you think about what he just played before he plays the next thing. Then I tell them, I'm against smoking because it's not good for your health, but I almost took up smoking so I could play like Miles Davis. Because what I realized was it wasn't that Miles was being profound, if he was taking a smoke break. Every picture there is of Miles Davis is trumpet in one hand, cigarette in the other hand. It's like, okay, I get it now. The reason he's so profound and giving you so much space is he's playing a few notes, smoke break, playing a few notes, smoke break. I'm just kidding. But one of the best things that ever happened to me in music school was my professor said, okay, everybody, you're going to take this album, Kind of Blue. You're going to go home. You're going to translate or copy or basically learn Miles Davis' solo on this song on whatever instrument you play. If you play vibraphone, if you play guitar, if you play sax, whatever it is, you're going to learn this solo note for note. And then you're going to have to come back and play it. And man, I learned on the guitar, obviously, that I tried so hard to replicate even, we call them fracks. If you blow a note on a trumpet and the embouchure is not quite right or lip's not quite right, the trumpet can kind of squeak on you. And saxophones do it too, and that's called fracking a note. So I tried to replicate even the fracked notes on the guitar as best I could. And it was one of the best things I ever had to do. It just taught me so much. Basically, music is a language, and the only way you learn to speak it fluently and speak it with conviction and speak it with meaning and intention is to copy the masters, learn how they speak, learn their syntax, their punctuation, their vocabulary. And then once you've done that, you can start contributing your own vocabulary and syntax. And you can start actually contributing to the body of musical language. It was a watershed moment for me as a musician.
When I first started looking at your videos and checking you out and stuff like that, I thought you were kind of a jokester. You like to laugh, you like to have fun and all that stuff, but you do not let your blindness define you.
Yeah, that's a pretty important concept, I think. The fact is we have to acknowledge what our limitations are. Not to do so would be irrational, but you don't want to define yourself in terms of those limitations. And I think if you don't take a minute to pause and think about what that really means, it sounds like that's not a very big difference if they're just a slight change in words, but it really means a lot. The idea is that I acknowledge that I can't drive.
Oh, whoa. Wait a second. I saw the video. You actually hijacked a car, threw your cane aside, and jumped in it and drove off.
I did. Let me tell you something. I'll try anything once.
Blind man driving. Yeah.
Your love got a grip on me. Falling for you, I feel like a blind man driving. Yeah, can't see where I'm going, baby. Even when I go wrong, it feels so right.
The hook to the song is like, loving you is like a blind man driving. I know you're bad for me. I know I shouldn't be involved with you because you're nuts, but
that's love.
But you got me hooked. But I do think, my dad's an amazing person. He had a degree in political science, and he went on to work for Ted Kennedy and Jimmy Carter, but he also worked with Ronald Reagan. He worked with George W. Bush. He's worked with all these different people from both sides of the aisle. He had a friend, Max Cleland, who was Secretary of State and Senator in our home state of Georgia. He had several different roles with the Veterans Administration. And Max has no legs below the knee and no arm below the elbow in one arm. And he was a Vietnam vet who fell on a grenade. Well, we had a chance to meet. I go to meet Max for the first time. I'm standing up. He's in a wheelchair. And so what I normally do is I just say, hi, I'm Joey Stuckey, and I just sort of stick my hand out. And then people just sort of usually grab my hand and shake it. It means that I'm not fumbling around looking for your hand.
Right.
You take my hand, right?
Yeah.
I did that to Max, but the problem was I was standing, he was sitting. I didn't know that. So I'm standing there with my hand, above his head. So my dad sort of takes my arm and sort of guides my hand down to where Max's is. But the problem is, in his zeal to move my arm, he got me the arm that had no hand. I mean, I know you can see the expression on my face, like, what is going on? And Max is like, what, are you blind or something? I'm like, yeah. And so the point is, my dad never told me that Max was in a wheelchair. He never told me he was missing any limbs. I had no idea. He never told Max that his son was blind. While we had to acknowledge those things, they weren't what was important. What was important was my dad had a friend that he admired named Max Cleland, and his son that he loved named Joey Stuckey, and he thought they were such people of character that they should meet. So our disabilities never really entered his mind. He didn't think about that. That to me was like a real teachable moment. And I've carried that with me ever since, because it's like, okay, obviously we have to acknowledge that there are things that I have to do differently or things that I can't do. But at the same time, to think of yourselves in terms of just being blind or just being in a wheelchair is really shortchanging yourself. As I say, yes, acknowledge your limitations, but don't define yourselves in terms of those limitations. Because if you do, other people will too. That being said, I'm not embarrassed about being blind. And actually, honestly, getting kind of back to the video you were talking about and the song Blind Man Driving, there are times that being blind is pretty funny. I don't believe in politically correct speech. And what I mean by that is not that I don't appreciate people wanting to be spoken to with dignity. We all deserve that. I would never want to hurt somebody's feelings. If you want to call me visually impaired, that's fine. But the fact is, the more accurate definition is that I'm blind. Eyes don't work.
Yeah, people treat the word blind like a 4-letter word.
Yeah, we need to be honest about what it is. If we can't talk about it in an honest way, there's no real way to talk about it in ways that will bring about positive change. So I like to use humor to sort of diffuse any discomfort or any awkwardness that like someone that's sighted might feel around me. They might worry about saying something. Oh gosh, this guy's blind. I probably just said something that upset him. I like them to know kind of right up front. I don't feel that way. Don't worry about it. I know if I'm being insulted or I'm not. And, I have been insulted before. But, by and large, most people have good intentions. So the video Blind Man Driving, we wanted it to really be fun. And I've got to tell you, as proud as I am of some of my musical accomplishments, I'm probably more proud of that video than anything else because running at full tilt and opening a door all in one take, pretty tricky when you can't see where you're going.
What do you mean you can't come? I'm blind. How am I going to get You know what? Forget it. I'll figure it out. Fine. Stop! It's an emergency. I need your car.
What?
I need your car.
For what?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, my God.
Jeez. Women drivers.
You're a triple threat now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. And so I was like, I'm going to bust my face. I was like, man, I'm going to fall. This is going to suck. We did a couple different takes, but I was able to execute. I'm really proud of that. It was just really neat that the community got behind the video and really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah.
I will also say that those of you who want to explore my YouTube channel, please like my cat video. There's only one of them. It's called Karate Kitty. I just knew it would go viral and be my claim to fame. And it only has like 26 views, and I am just heartbroken by this because I think this cat's really funny. Anyone want to help me get that cat video viral, please do. What she does is funny. I'm not going to tell you what she does, so that maybe you'll actually go watch it.
We will. Another thing that I noticed is your song, Trouble Comes in Threes. That really hit me like, wow, this really goes back in the roots of blues, rock.
Sweet time, troubles come in threes. Oh, yeah.
And then I noticed there's a guy named Randall Brandlett on that. I remember him from Robbie Robertson. Who else? Allman Brothers.
Yeah, Allman Brothers, Greg Allman, a friend. Also Traffic, Steve Winwood. And not only that, he's a prolific songwriter. And Bonnie Raitt has recorded a couple of his songs as well. I mean, Randall is the coolest of people. He's known me since I was a really young musician. He's been guest appearing on records with me since I was 24, 25 years old. One of my earlier records was called Ironies, Pain of the Light That Guides. He's on 2 tracks on that. One is called Bad Dream. He plays saxophone on that because he's a multi-instrumentalist. He plays saxophone, he sings, he plays keys. I believe he may even play a little guitar. It's just brilliant. And then another song on that record is called So Blue, and he plays C3 organ on that. But when I cut that Troubles Come in Threes, I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida. I moved to Macon, Georgia when I was 15. I don't know if there's something in the water here or what, but there is a deep, rich heritage of Southern music, whether it's blues or Southern rock or country. There's a lot of amazing, iconic people that have come from here. Little Richard, for example. Mm-hmm. I think Little Richard, he sort of, I guess, would be considered 50s rock. But there's a lot of blues DNA in that 50s rock. Allman Brothers lived here for a long time. They weren't from here, but they lived here for a lot of. Someone's become a very good friend of mine, Jimmy Hall from the band Wet Willie. They were here. Marshall Tucker.
Oh, Wet Willie, yeah.
Just fantastic guys. Jimmy and I have done several really wonderful things together. And God, what an entertainer he is. It's like a master class to showmanship whenever you get a chance to hear him perform or see him perform. Another good friend of mine, Chuck Lavelle, played with the Fabulous Thunderbirds.
Mm-hmm.
He's played with Eric Clapton. But of course, he's probably most well known for playing with the Rolling Stones. I think he came on with the Stones. I may have this wrong. Roughly around 1988 with the Steel Wheels album. And then still is with them and is their musical director. There is a real connection, almost like a magical connection, some sort of odd spiritual ley line to like the blues and sort of roots music in this area. And as a kid in Jacksonville, Florida, even though, Leonard Skinner was coming from that area and 38 Special was coming from that area, I really didn't know much about blues. I listened to the Beatles and then got to Macon and it just sort of seeps into your pores. You become part of the heritage almost through osmosis or something. I knew that Randall had to play on that track and he's a monster player. I was like, well, I've got to make sure I play my best because Randall's a monster player. I don't want to sound like a chump.
That's the song that just made me feel the roots of your music. And then I was listening to Six String Soldier.
I'm going nowhere, getting that record time. I know you're out there.
It sounded like there was some heartbreak or something from that album. Is that right?
Yeah, so at my core, blues music and sort of roots music appeals to me because there is a lot of emphasis on very strong vocals, very expressive vocals. And there's also room for guitar heroes and for serious guitar playing. So I think that's why it really sort of naturally appeals to who I am. As a writer, I'm in my early 40s. I have lived and experienced 2 or 3 lifetimes worth of stuff. The Six String Soldier record did have a little bit of extra heartbreak to it. And the reason that it did was not for the reason you might think. My dad had a heart attack that year. He was really, really sick. At the same time, my wife had to retire from nursing that she'd been doing 20-something years because she developed autoimmune disease and was taking chemotherapy drugs. So 2016 was very difficult, was very painful, but not that anything was really expressed on the record. But I think that I was able to bring the pain through, the heartbreak through, the soulfulness through, and channel kind of what I was going through at the time.
I mean, you have a wide variety of different music. It has that 50s, then it has the 60s, it has the blues, it has all sorts of sounds. But there's another song that when I was telling people I'm going to interview Joey Stuckey, and I had the Amazon device play it, and on came Take a Walk in the Shadows. I think it starts out with some Congo at first. And then all of a sudden the guitar hit. It was like, wow, that was really good.
That is high praise, and I appreciate that. It's funny because there's 2 versions of that song floating around. There's one, like 1994, 95. I was really young. I got a lot of flack from people that were working with me. That's a stupid idea. And I said, look, the bottom line is I'm going to stand or I'm going to fall, and I'm willing to accept the consequences of my actions. Arguing with me about my vision is not going to get us anywhere. This is my record. This is my vision. And, we're going to do it my way. And so then the next record, what I realized was the better way to work is to surround yourself with talented people that you trust and guide them, but let them do their thing. Like, for example, in the Shadow of the Sun record, one of the great trumpet players, Al Ches, is on a song called Ain't It Good to Be in Love. And Al plays with Tower of Power. He also was on The Late Show with David Letterman, playing with Paul Schaefer for 17 years. Just a fantastic trumpet player. And he said, what do you want me to do? I was like, look, I'm hiring you to do you. You're going to play whatever it is you feel. I may give you a few course corrections, but I'm not going to micromanage. Like the first record, I micromanaged. And it's just a much more satisfying experience.
Where did the idea to have the local school choir sing along on one of your songs?
That was the genius of the wonderful friend and talented partner in crime that I have in my band now, Nestor Hines, a man in his late 30s. He has a master's degree in oboe, and he is my bass player in my rock trio and my jazz trio. He's so smart, so talented. Well, we were preparing for a tour, and I said, look, here's this song, Ain't It Good to Be in Love? And his day job is that he teaches music to a middle school. He said, I just love this song so much. It's so positive. I just feel like I could write a wonderful part for the kids to sing. Do you mind if my show choir sings it for their Christmas concert? And I was like, no, of course, that would be an honor.
It's so amazing to have a night where we can inspire people to live a better life through music. I think it's the closest thing we had to the language of the angels, and I'm glad that Nestor's here teaching it. And this song, a dear friend of mine in the UK co-wrote this song with me and passed away in September unexpectedly, and it's so moving for me to be able to play this for you tonight in his memory, and I thank you for that opportunity.
In the meantime, my dear friend that I co-wrote that song with, Charlie Hoskins. Charlie was a UK producer, was involved with a band called the Pogues, which had a bunch of hits in the 80s, Shane MacGowan and the Pogues.
Oh, yeah.
There was a splinter group that came from that band called the Popes, and that Charlie started with Paul McGuinness. And then they also had a drummer friend of theirs, Will Morrison, from the band Modern English. You might remember those. Had a song.
Oh, yeah.
Their big hit was Melt With You.
Yeah, I'll Stop the World.
That's right, yeah. Charlie came to see me when I was speaking at the University College of London, and I booked myself a couple little gigs at some pubs around town. And he was a friend of a friend of a friend of mine. And they just said, look, you need to go see this guy play and go support him. And he did. He walked up to me, and the first thing he said was, my name is Charlie Hoskins, and my superpower is I can sing like a girl. And so I was immediately, this guy's going to be one of my friends. So we wanted to write together, and we wanted to collaborate because we just admired each other so much, and we loved each other. And in 2017, Charlie went into the hospital thinking that he had a hernia and ended up having cancer, and he passed away in 2017. And he passed away before the Christmas concert for the choir. And so I told the kids, I said, look, it means so much to me that you're doing this because my friends passed away, and he was very proud of this song. And they dedicated the whole concert to Charlie, which was really just such a thrill. So then when we recorded the Shadow of the Sun record in 2018, I was like, the kids already know this song. Let's bring them into the studio and get them to be on the record. Because we have like 30 middle schoolers.
Good to be in love. Sha-la-la. Sha-la-la. Ain't it good to be in love? Sha-la-la.
They behaved like pros. They were champs, worked hard. They sang their heart off. I think they were just a really great addition.
That's really neat that you have such a great story behind your songs and everything. I'm sorry about your friend passing away. I'm glad you did such a great tribute to him. It'd be really neat to take some of those sneak peeks behind the scene.
Today I want to share with you my drum room. This is one of the most acoustically exciting spaces in the studio. Take a listen to my friend Charles Arnold playing on my single Blind Man Driving.
Joey, I got a question for you. What advice would you give to someone who's visually impaired, blind, whatever we want to call it, that is thinking about a career in music and has questions or something like that? What advice would you give to them?
I'm going to first give you the same advice I give to all my students, whether they're blind or whatever, no matter what. And that is, if you love music so much that it hurts not to do it, then welcome to the industry. If you do not feel that way, this is not the career for you. And the reason I say that is not to be negative, but to be honest. This is a difficult career. It is a career that puts you in a lot of very awkward positions. What do I mean by that? Well, number one, it's full of people that are highly delusional about their skill set and how good they are. It's also full of people that are con artists who will come to you and promise you the moon and tell you how great you are, which is what you want to hear, only to find out they take your money and you get nothing. Finally, it's an industry that at the early stages, at the lower levels, where everybody's got to start somewhere, right? But if you're starting at the bottom, which is where most people start, then most of the venues where you can play bars, coffee houses, churches, festivals. They're controlled by people that are non-music professionals. They're not going to want to pay you. They're not going to want to respect you. And it's not that they're mean people or they're bad people. They just don't know that it's ignorance. They don't know the 10,000 hours you put into being good at that guitar. And people say, oh, it's art. Don't you want to do it for free? Well, as a matter of fact, I don't. It's like, this is how I've chosen to make a living. So I have to be paid. If I was independently wealthy and had billions of dollars, I'd be glad to play for free. But that's not an option. I got to provide for my family. It's tough. And there are going to be people that tell you you're no good, you can't make it. And to those people, all I can say is this. You may not be the next Michael Jackson or Paul McCartney or Katy Perry or Adele. You may not sell out 80,000-seat arenas. You may be doing good to fill up 100-seat bars. But regardless of where you fall, and it really has nothing to do with talent, really has more to do with the business side, with marketing, and with, how accessible is your music. If your music is very sophisticated musically, it's going to be harder for people that aren't musically trained to appreciate what you're doing. So you've got immediately a smaller audience. Right? But there will be people that like your music. You just have to find those people and cultivate those people. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. There's a lot of frustration. And sometimes you can do everything right and still not be successful in a certain aspect. Let's say you're a marketing genius and you have done everything right, man. You've done radio ads, you've done newspaper, you've done interviews, you've gone out and put up flyers. You got a street team wearing your T-shirts and handing out stickers and all these things. And people are just like, oh, yeah, man, I'm going to go. This is going to be a great concert. I'm going to go to it. And then what happens? Hurricane Katrina hits. You can't control that. So, there are just times that, things just don't work out. But you can always learn from those times. And just like in music, we have major chords, which are what in musical terms we call consonant chords, meaning that they are very stable. And they're places you can stay for a long time. And then we have dissonant chords, which tend to be minor, or maybe some sort of diminished or augmented chord, or maybe some sort of altered dominant chord. And those chords are much more dissonant and a little bit more jarring to the average listener and to the average ear. And so those chords are chords you can't play for long periods of time. Your ear wants to hear them resolve or move to a consonant chord. Life's the same way. You can use the bad experiences or the dissonant experiences to grow and learn and be better, just like you can use the positive experiences where everybody's telling you great and you're doing everything right. So that's the first thing I tell all my students. Just understand that it's hard, but it can be done. And I believe that if you're honest with yourself, honesty is so key. If you're honest with yourself and you say, what makes me happy and how I define success is a limousine and 10 million fans. Okay, if that's what makes you happy, then go for it. Just know that it is not, I've written a great song today and tomorrow I'm a star. There's so much work that goes into those two events. Like that's the alpha and the omega, right? There's a ton of stuff that happens in between. People say stuff like, oh man, this guy was an overnight sensation. No, that's an overnight sensation 20 years in the making. You've never heard this guy. Meanwhile, he's been traveling up and down the road playing every bar on the East Coast for 20 years. My point is, it can be done, but you have to be dedicated. You have to be determined, and you have to give yourself some grace. And then you also have to have a plan that is documented rigorously so that you can look back and go, well, when I did X, Y, Z, that did not work. I won't do that again. But when I did ABC, that did work. I will do that again. I told my wife that I was content to leave the world a little bit better than I found it, one person and one song at a time. That's the journey. And so, look, playing to 80,000 people, I'm sure that's a great thrill. If it were to happen to me, I'd take it. That's fine. But it's not really the goal. That's not really where my mind's at. My mind's at doing the best I can do, delivering that to people that care about what I do and like it, that it means something to, and making a good enough living that I'm not going to end up in a van down by the river. And that's it. My goals are really, when you break them all down, all my aspirations sort of boil down to that point. And I love traveling and meeting new people and experiencing new ideas and hearing stories and people coming up to me after a show and say, this song meant so much to me today. I'm so glad I heard you play that song tonight. It made my day better. Man, that's what it's all about. When you can see the joy that these people have, that you have brought them for a couple hours, and they express that with tips, or they buy your record and they're so excited with your record. You can tell that they're excited. They got the record. They can't wait to get home and listen to it. They're so excited when you sign it for them, or if you take a picture with them. That's what you should do. You are not the star. If you think you're the master and they're the servant, you got it the wrong way around. The fact is, these guys are your boss, basically, and they're the reason that you're blessed enough they'll do what you got to do. So if you want to have a real career that means something, you got to come early, you got to stay late, you got to shake hands, you got to kiss babies. I think music's one of the last great frontiers where you can really connect with people in a meaningful way again, where you're not hiding behind a screen. Now, don't get me wrong, social media is great. It has a lot of wonderful usages. I use it. But if human connection and exploring what it's like to live and to be human and to share that experience with others is what means something to you from a spiritual place, from an intellectual place. Being a musician that travels and shares your music is the best way to do it. Man, when it goes right, there's nothing better. And if you work hard, even the nights that aren't your best nights are still going to be okay. Even though I was like, oh man, I did not execute what I wanted. Most people have no idea that I was not happy. They were happy. So I don't let myself get in that headspace. I always keep my head in the game, and I always stay honest, and I communicate with my audience on a constant level, because we play a bunch of music, but I talk to the audience and I tell them stories about the songs. I joke with my bandmates on stage and give them kind of a hard time, and we have some banter, and we're always communicating and engaging the audience. And what's really exciting is when you're performing, there is a symbiosis between audience and performer, or audience and artist, if you prefer, because I'm giving you something and then you're giving it back. So I'm giving you my heart, my soul, my experience, my mind, my thoughts, my music. And when you receive that and go, yes, I understand what you're saying, I have also lived this, or wow, that's a new idea, or boy, these guys are so entertaining, and they give that energy back to you. I mean, it's an amazing way to communicate. It really puts the lie to a trap that we fall into as human beings from time to time. And that is to think that nobody will ever understand our journey, and that in a town full of 9 million people, we're alone. And that is something that a lot of people think, that they feel isolated. They feel like they're alone. But the fact is, while I can't understand your journey 100%, I can't totally know what it's like to be you, there's so much that we can share and that we should share. And music's the best way to do that. You can really get into a place of greater understanding about who you are and the kind of world you want to live in, and you can share that with other like-minded people, and it's an amazing process. And those are the things that excite me. I mean, I'm not saying I don't want to make a good living. Look, the more money I make, the more guitars I can buy. You know what I'm saying? And also, I reject the notion that being an artist also means you have to be poor. If that's happening to you, it means that you are not executing on the business side, and you need to either step up and do that, or find someone you can trust to do it for you, because there is absolutely no reason to be a starving artist. I mean, the first couple of years, sure. But if you've been doing this for a while and you're still, like barely hanging on, that is not necessary. It just means that you haven't found the right way to disseminate your music, and you just need someone to help you with that. And it could be going to school, or hiring a manager, or whatever it is. But being poor and being an artist don't have to be the same thing. Now, moving to the specific question of the blind, it's hard. And to be candid, most institutions that I've dealt with, I'm talking about schools here, don't want to put in the extra work to make things accessible. I'm not mad about that. It's just true. The way we combat that is twofold. Number one, stick to your guns and insist on being treated fairly. Just politely, sweetly, firmly. You say, well, you know what? I deserve equal access ADA says I get equal access, and we're going to have to figure this out together. And when they're rude, you take the high road. You never engage people in a negative way because you're going to lose. Insist on being treated fairly and stick to your guns. And if that means you have to get a lawyer involved, well, so be it. I've had times where I thought I was going to have to sue an institution to get equal access. Now, the best thing you can do is if you have a problem with accessibility, come to whoever it is that can fix that for you at the school or at the recording studio or whatever it is. Come to them with the problem. But if you can, come to them with the solution also. So when I have a problem, I do a lot of research. I'm not going to name the company, but there's a company that had a tool that I wanted to be able to use, but I couldn't. It wasn't accessible. And I came to them and said, listen, I need to be able to compete with my sighted counterparts. Your tool's very important in the industry. And I'm not asking you to worry about version 3 that you're selling right now. I want us to work together and make version 4 accessible. Because if we start with accessibility in mind, it's real easy. If you try to retrofit something that's not accessible and the accessibility wasn't in mind, that becomes cost prohibitive. Plus, think about this. By the time they get version 3 to be accessible for me, version 4 is out. And from a small business standpoint, it doesn't make good sense to spend a lot of money on a product whose shelf life is almost gone anyway. And so you come and you say, here are the things that I can't currently do with your product. Here are some ideas I have about how we can make it accessible. I'm talking about software right now. You can get under the hood of your program and do stuff that I can't do as a user. You come at it from a perspective of saying, I understand you're a small business. I understand you can't spend tons and tons of money trying to help a very small market. But let's also agree that the right thing to do is to make your product accessible for blind people. That's the right thing to do. And that is if you're doing online courses, whether it's the school's website, whether it's a software tool for music production, or whether it's a piece of hardware for music production. The hardware stuff is the hardest thing. If it's software, it's not that hard. People think it's hard, but it's really not. It's just a matter of getting the dedication and the time. But if you can approach it where they don't feel like you're just complaining, but you're actually coming to them with ideas about how to make it good, not only for you, but for them too, you'll get pretty far.
And if there's any listeners out there that want to practice this type of advocacy, look up Pro Tools and Audition, and we'll see where you can get with that. And if you make any ground, let us all know.
Pro Tools is still not where it needs to be on accessibility, and it really is the industry standard. While you certainly can use other DAWs, and for those of you blind people that are out there, there's Reaper is a good DAW recording software for music. It does not have a lot of bells and whistles. Also, Magix has a program called SoundForge, and they have another called Samplitude, and both of those are excellent, have a lot of accessibility. We used to use Sonar a lot, which was wonderful, but then they really changed how things were done under the hood, and then they went out of business. And now they've been bought by, I think it was BandLab, and they're giving Sonar away for free, but they have no interest in working on accessibility because they're giving the program away for free. I'm having to migrate into Pro Tools myself. I'm using Samplitude as well. And they're both fantastic products. You can work in any of those DAWs, but there are certain people, especially in like the film industry, there are certain people that, like, if you're not recording with Pro Tools, you're not going to get work. So, I mean, if you're a studio owner, it's just how it is. They were the first to really come out with a product like that. They've done their branding really well. So we do need to continue working hard on Pro Tools. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have. One of the other hardest things is pitch correction. Pitch correction software is very graphical in nature, and it's real hard to make that accessible for the blind. There are some guys that have some scripts out for Melodyne. They're pretty good, but I'd like to see something better. And I could wax on about this stuff all day long, but
so
I won't.
One of your main tools is using JAWS on your computer then?
Yeah, primarily. It's kind of weird.
For screen reading.
Basically, I have them all. Between JAWS being the primary one and then a couple other ones that are freeware, I can get a lot of stuff done. And then with my iPhone with VoiceOver does certain things better than JAWS, and then JAWS does certain things better than it. So between the two, I get about, 80% accessibility. And then there are times where I'll just grab a pair of eyes and say, hey, top left-hand corner of the screen, you see a little red box. Can you click that, please? Just whatever I have to do. I'm getting ready to open a brand new recording facility and spend $1 million that I don't really have, but I'm going to do it anyway. And the board that I'm buying, they have committed to making this board custom accessible for me through a series of beeps and spoken feedback.
Oh, wow.
And so this board will be 100% accessible. Everything from the meters to what mode it's in. They're doing it because they think it's the right thing to do, and the board's not cheap. I mean, it's $200,000. I have worked 20-something years to be in a place where I have a little bit of an extra resource, where I'm able to get some custom solutions like Ronnie Millsap and Stevie Wonder and some of those guys had. But what we need is something that's more ubiquitous and that everybody can have access to. So blind people, if you want to go buy my record now, I promise you, if I get super rich, I will make all these products accessible for free. If we all knew what it was that made a hit record, everybody would have a hit record. There's a certain alchemical nature, I think, to make a hit record. Like, there's a little bit of voodoo. You don't really know how the magic's happening. No. And then there's a lot of stuff that we do know, right? There's a lot of science, but there's a lot of art. But a lot of it comes down to being at the right place at the right time.
Like
a lot of it comes
My
down
Sharona. Remember that song?
Yeah, the knack.
Explain that one. Was it just a, just that sound, or what did it?
I love that song. I think it's a good beat.
Mm-hmm.
It's at a good tempo. I think it's a little smutty. People like a little trash in their music.
The Romantics, that's what I like about you. Out of Nowhere, the song, big hit, still played.
And of course, there was Talking in Your Sleep was another romantic song, which actually I like better. There's a certain amount of mystery to what makes a hit and what doesn't. One of the things that we do talk about in my classes is I ask my students at the beginning of the semester, what's more important, a well-written song or a well-performed song? And there's no right answer. The purpose is to debate, to make them start thinking critically. But if you look at Bob Dylan, he's a great example to me because Bob Dylan is a terrible singer. From a technical standpoint, he is just abysmal. And yet, he's one of the most compelling and relevant artists of the 20th century. And so you say to yourself, well, how is it a guy that really can't sing be this worldwide phenomenon? In my personal opinion, it has to do with the fact that he was able to channel the zeitgeist in the Vietnam protest era, in the civil rights era. And I think to label Bob Dylan as simply a protest singer would not be fair to him. I think he's more than that.
He claims that he never played at a protest.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, I don't think to claim him as a protest singer would be fair. But I do think that the environment in which he found his music being consumed was a protest era, and what he had to say and the way he had to say it captured the mood and the imagination of the world at that time. So in that sense, he was in the right place, right time. If Bob Dylan came out today, I really don't think he'd have a shot because today everything's auto-tuned, everything is just, perfected, and oftentimes they perfect the soul right out of it. I don't think he'd be the worldwide phenomenon now if he started his career today because, he was able to capture a certain experience that the world was having and put it in musical terms.
The right place, the right time. Now, you mentioned overnight sensation. People think like Chris Stapleton. When he came along and won those big awards, everyone think, oh, wow, look at that. Overnight, bang. Oh, no. He had a journey. He has a long journey. Him and his wife going to little, like you said, the small town bars. And he wanted to thank the 7 people that stuck around some nights, And
that song, Tennessee Whiskey, we play that song. And what's so much fun is there's a lot of room for me to do some vocal gymnastics and some guitar gymnastics and to have fun. And yet it does not affect the heart and the power of the song. I can play a crazy guitar solo and the song still be slow and sultry and still have that wonderful vibe that it has.
We can get really intimate sounds or larger sound, whether it's clean or distorted. We've got a number of mics, amps, cabs that are perfect for every situation. You'll see here up on the close mic, I've got the MicTech PM10. And for a room mic today, I'm using the Blue Kiwi. I'm using an Ibanez head and a Morgan cabinet with the El Nico Gold speaker.
What you said about guitars, you're not alone. We interviewed Johnny Highland. He said he keeps buying guitars, and he called himself Guitarded. He doesn't know why. You also remind me, we did an interview with John Kay from Steppenwolf, and he did a song later on. It's called Feed the Fire, and it goes along with what you're talking about, that passion, filling the passion. Isn't it the $1 million? I mean, which would be nice. Then you can supply your guitardedness.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. But it's just following your stars. You're telling all these people to reach for their stars, reach for their passion and feeding their fire. I think it's great what you're doing. You're teaching, you're playing, you're creating, you're living the life you wanted to do when you were 13. I hope you updated your Radio Shack microphones.
Yes, I have. My wife is a dear. Let me just tell you. She has so few things that she ever wants. She's just not materially centered in any way. So if she ever wants something, I always make sure I get it for her because she never asks for anything. And she is so loving to me. In fact, she's a bigger fan of my music than I am, which is hard to comprehend, but it's true. I was doing a session recording a band. I wasn't the producer, but I was helping out. And the guy that was the producer had a Royers R122, which is a modern condenser version of the classic R121. He said, what kind of mic do you want a guitar amp? And I said, you got the Royers 121? He's like, I do, but I also have the 122, and you'll like that one better. I was like, no, I won't. That's ridiculous. The 121 is a classic, and it's the greatest mic ever, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, let's A-B them. Let's put them both up on the guitar and let you pick which one you like better. And he was right. I liked the 122 better. I was like, oh, my gosh. Well, my wife kind of crept off for about 5 minutes. I was like, I wonder where she's going. She'd gone and ordered me one. She gone and ordered me. And, they're like $2,000 microphones.
Wow.
So that's not a purchase that one makes lightly.
No.
But she'd just gone and said, the best way for me not to have to hear about this for the next month and a half is I'm going to go buy him one.
So $2,000 shuts you up a little bit.
Yeah, it will certainly take the edge off. I have about 200 microphones in my collection. I'm getting ready to expand that by about another 50. One of them will be an honest to God real 1940s U47, which is one of the greatest microphones ever made. They're not cheap.
Oh, no, no.
It's the original Telefunken. Yeah, they're about $20,000.
Is that with the steel casing and everything?
Yeah. That's a ridiculous amount of money to spend. But the fact of the matter is, I want to create really compelling music. Now, I can't afford but one of these things, but I feel like this is a microphone. There are a lot of vintage and classic microphones that companies have made incredible replicas of. I've worked with a company called Warm Audio, and Warm Audio makes the best analog equipment that just costs so little. It's just so good.
I've seen these microphones over the last couple of years. People are talking about the Warm microphone.
They're amazing. To be clear, I'm an artist endorser with Warm Audio. I bought a pair of WA, which is Warm Audio, 84s. And the W84 is the Warm Audio modern version of the original Neumann KM84s. And I have a pair of those as well. My KM84s are not the original ones from like the 70s and 80s. They're the ones from like the 90s and the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got them, they didn't sound like the ones that I'd heard on all the hit records, So anyway, I bought these Warm Audio, and my God, they sound like the originals. I mean, I was like, oh my God, did they make a mistake and send me some real, KM84s?
Oops.
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I could have cried. I was like, this is so great. I love these mics. They're incredible. And the price is like ridiculous. I mean, I can't remember what they cost. I don't know how they make them for what they're selling them. I just don't. But the Telefunken, the original 1940s U47, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to pretend to know what the magic is. I don't build microphones for a living. I mean, I know some about it, but that's not what I do. But that's just something you cannot recreate. So I made the decision that because I want to offer boutique, really creative experiences, that it was worth it for me to have one of those microphones.
Mm-hmm.
There's no substitution. So, and that thing was, like I said, $20,000. I mean, who can afford more than one?
What was Sun Studios using back in the day?
Today, they're still using a lot of stuff they had left over from the original sessions. Remember, they had that Elvis mic, the one that has that kind of grill. They had 5 of those. I don't know what happened to the other 3, but they said over the years they got lost or damaged. And so they only have 2 left. One of them is broken and they just use it as a prop. They let people touch it and stuff that come to the museum. The other one still works. That's what I sang on. Now, my suspicion is that they could repair their second one, and get it working. But my impression is that they don't really want to spend a lot of money. They want to preserve what's there, but I don't think they have the money to spend, even though it probably wouldn't cost that much, considering that it's a microphone that Elvis actually sang on. It's a real one. I'd be willing to spend 10 grand or whatever to fix it. I doubt they're pulling in enough money to justify that. So they're using that, and then they've got a couple of the most modern mic they have, like SM57s, which, I mean, those are good all-around microphones. You can't go wrong with them. You can drop them off a 4-story building. It's not going to matter. Yeah. They also have a bunch of RCA. There's several RCA mics that they have. So they're all ribbon mics. They got the RCA ribbon over the drum set for the overhead, and then I had one on my amp, and I think that and the Elvis mic were the 3 vintage mics they had available, and then the kick drum mic and the snare mic, I think, were SM57s. The bass guitar mic, I think it was a Sennheiser 421, which makes sense. But that's basically what they have, and they're plugging it straight into a console, straight into Pro Tools. It's the same room, and you're standing on the same X that Elvis stood on, and, they set you up at the same way they always have.
Howling Wolf and all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, man. We just felt like we had the spirits in the room, of all the greats, and it made us better. We felt like we honored them. I don't know. We felt like we tapped into something special just by being in that room. And, my studio, I'm modern. I have everybody in their own rooms, and I have ISO booths and blah, blah. I have 15, 16 mics on just the drum set. That's how I do it. But this was 5 or 6 mics for the whole band, all of us in one room.
You mentioned steel wheels. And I remember Keith Richards was talking about Muscle Shoals and recording. He says, like you mentioned, the spirit of the building. Have you ever been to Muscle Shoals?
I have not been to Muscle Shoals, but I have to say, going to Sun Studio kind of woke up in me a desire to visit a few places that are classic.
What was that? Music City, Sun City, or something like that?
Sound City is the movie you're thinking of, right?
Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah. I make my students watch that every semester, actually. Yeah, Sound City. So, I mean, there are a few places that I really would love to visit, and basically what I would do to keep costs down, because it really doesn't make sense for me as a studio owner to spend all this money on my place and then go record somewhere else. But
explain that one to the wife.
It's just not a good business plan. There are just a handful of places like Abbey Road.
Oh,
that's like going to Mecca. So there's a handful of places like that I would like to. And basically what we would do is just rent a day and just do the same thing we did at Sun Studios, just track a live album. Basically, you play your live set, and then I'll mix it and do all that stuff at my place.
In reality, a lot of these places, they talk about the dimensions of the room, what made the room, the sound, what made the acoustics and all that, especially with Abbey Road.
Yeah.
But then you have Sun Studio. I mean, my patio is the same size as Sun Studio, the main open area.
Right.
Well, not the same. It's 19 by 33, so it's a little off. But I was always thinking, hey, I could build Sun Studio.
Yeah, you could. Well, basically, watching Sound City, the building they were in was a wreck. When it would rain, sometimes the parking lot would flood, sometimes the lobby would flood. And it was an old warehouse, and they did no special acoustical treatment of any kind to their tracking room. They just got lucky, and it sounded great. It just got lucky. If you watch that movie, that they literally say, we didn't do anything special in the room. It just turned out to be awesome. Now, you take that and you go to Sun Studio. One of the things he did when it was originally made, and it's still there now, is he has, being blind, I'm not really going to describe this well, but he has these sort of weird convex patterns in the ceiling. It almost looks like looking at waves roll up on an ocean. It's got these weird humps in the ceiling that kind of remind me of waves. But that was part of that room's magic. But the other part was that the original owner and engineer literally walked around the room and listened to the musicians and said, well, this spot sounds best to the drums, and this spot sounds best to the vocals, so we're going to put our microphones here. So literally, he just walked around, listened, and that's how he did it. And I think our science is so sophisticated now with the kind of measurements we can make that we can really do some incredible things with acoustic design and all this kind of stuff. But, a lot of those rooms, I think it was partly luck, and then people, using their ears and going, "Oh, this sounds." I did the same thing in my drum room. I just walked around the room, clapping my hands, and wherever I found a spot I don't like the way it sounded when I clapped, like put a piece of foam here. That's how I tuned it. I didn't use a spectrum analyzer or anything. I mean, I just went, "This sounds good. This doesn't,"
Yeah.
And that was it.
The heart of every studio is the mixing console, and we have a really special one. It's actually a British console that I had flown over from England to Macon, Georgia, because I love how warm it sounds. The EQs are amazing and flexible, and the mic pre's are just top of the line. This console is a 48-channel inline console for mix.
That must be really cool that you're able to have your own studio, create what you want to do, have your own sandbox. In one of the emails I sent you, I mentioned that even some of the organs, the keyboards that I hear in some of your songs, was there a whirly going on there?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very good,
Wow.
man. You got the ears. I do have some vintage Wurlitzer. I have 2 of them. And then I have 2 bass grand pianos and, of course, the B3.
Wow.
And
You
then
are
I have,
using up 3 stores.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, man. And then, of course, I do also have a massive sample library. And the Native Instruments sample library that goes with their complete control keyboard, it's pretty amazing because they've developed it where you can dial in as much or as little artifacts as you want. So if you want the keyboard to sound kind of older, you can add hiss and static to it.
Native instruments, yeah.
Yeah, like on the piano samples, you can add how much you hear the pedals working. So you literally can dial it up so much that when I take my foot off the sustain pedal, you hear it go clunk. Just like a real piano. You can control microphone distance. It's incredible.
Do you use the accessibility in that too with complete?
It's pretty good, yeah. It's pretty good. And my hat's off to them. But oddly, though, they haven't really promoted it like I think they should. And I'm not really sure why. But yeah, it has good accessibility. Not perfect, but it's
almost the only accessibility that you'll find in a keyboard.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, and back in the day when I could turn the knob all the way left and it'd stop, and then it would click when I turned it to the right or whatever. You could count clicks. Go, okay, I know if I turn all the way back to the front, count 7 clicks, I'm on my strings.
Now they wrap around.
But, they just spin continually. So this is, the Native Instruments thing is wonderful. It's worth the money. That's about $2,000 if you buy the 88 key version keyboard and then you buy the sample library that goes with it. But man, is it ever worth it?
It gives you a good fighting chance.
Oh man, it's got drum samples. It's got an Abbey Road drum kit, lots of great pianos and a lot of great synthesizers. There are really wonderful ways to incorporate all these sonic textures from the past to put a modern twist on them. But at the end of the day, I mean, what you're looking for as a producer, the first thing that I do when I take on a client, and a lot of people don't really understand what a producer does. A producer is the person that communicates between all the musicians, all the songwriters, all the business people, and helps get everybody on the same page and helps make primarily some musical decisions that the artist is not experienced enough to make for themselves. So one of the first things that I do when I take on an artist, we'll sit down, I'll have the artist play, 20, 30 songs that they've written. I mean, how many they got, but usually it's about 20 or 30. And then we pick, 10 to 15, or depending on their budget, maybe we'll do an EP. So in that case, we might do 4 to 6. We'll pick those songs we're going to put on the record. And then once we pick the songs, we've found a group of songs that seem to make sense together. The next thing I do is I pick the tone palette. I decide what is the vibe of this record? Is it going to be more modern? Are we doing more samples? Is it more electronic or is it more acoustic? Is it more analog? Are they warmer sounds? Are they brighter sounds? Is it more aggressive? Is it going to make it more mellow? I sort of pick the tone palette. And once I make that decision, then, everything else kind of flows from that point. So it's important to have a variety of tools. If you can mix and match microphones, amps, mic pre's, you have all these choices you can make that can really determine the kind of vibe you get. And of course, you can decide, well, do I want to hear the direct sound of the instrument, or do I want to hear more of how the room is reacting to the sound, or do I want some combination of the two? So that's why having all these different kinds of tools that are sort of radically different, that's why it's important. So you can really dive down deep and create something special that will help the artists, communicate. At the end of the day, what we're doing is communicating. I do whatever it takes to help them communicate who they are. And I've got a friend that thinks if you're a pop singer and you're a woman, that if you don't sound like Kelly Clarkson, then you're doing something wrong. We already have a Kelly Clarkson. We don't need another one. So my goal is not to force someone into some kind of box. My goal is just to support them and help them be the best, most perfect, genuine version of themselves that they can be, and to elevate that. That's why I spend a lot of money on all these extra tools and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the fun of it, the journey, the experience of it. And don't sell your own microphones because you never know. They might sound better tomorrow.
Well, remember, the minute you buy the hot new microphone, about a year later, it becomes junk and out of date. And 15 years later, it's vintage. So just hang on to them.
Yeah, that's right.
Hello, this is producer Joey Stuckey, and I'm here in Macon, Georgia. I'm really excited to be working with the Haptic Wave. The Haptic Wave is really an incredible invention. It's one that I think has the potential to truly revolutionize music making and music engineering for blind people. Basically, it's a big fader that moves from left to right. Essentially, what this device does is allows me to do the same thing a sighted engineer or musician would do with their eyes.
We've been talking to Joey Stuckey. Great person, great producer of music. I love your stories. I love everything you're doing, and I highly suggest people go out and check him out on YouTube. Go to his website, joeystuckey.com. How else can they reach you?
JoeyStuckey.com is a wonderful way. That's JoeyStuckey.com. Shoot me an email. We're always glad to connect with people on social media. My social media for Twitter and for Instagram is at JStuckeyMusic. That's the @ symbol. Facebook is Facebook.com/JoeyStuckey. I have 2 YouTube channels, but if you just type in my name, more videos than you'll ever want to see will pop up. I also have a thing called Bands in Town, which is a neat little thing that you can sign up for, and it will alert you if we're in your area. That's kind of a fun thing. And also sign up for the email newsletter. If you go to JoeyStuckey.com, there's an area called the Fan Zone. You get a lot of free music from there, and you can sign up for the email newsletter. And right now, my cousin, Stephanie, is the daughter of the son of the guy who started the Stuckey Candy Store. And they owned the Stuckey Candy Store for a long, long time, sold it, and they bought it back. And she is now taking over as CEO and president. And she actually sent me a code this afternoon. If you go to my email list and you sign up to get my email newsletter, you can get a free pecan log with any other purchase that you make and enter my code.
Stuckey Candy,
so,
really?
Lots of free stuff for you. Everybody wants a pecan log. I mean, if you haven't had one, you're going to love them. They really are highly delicious. You probably shouldn't eat more than one every so often because, you go to a diabetic coma, but they really are good.
Stuckey Candy, that goes way back.
Yeah, cleanest restaurant on the interstate. Even Stephen King has mentioned the Stuckey's Candy Store and Convenience Store in his book called Talisman.
Oh, that's really cool.
Stephen King, hats off to you, Stephen King. He has had more blind heroes in his books than anybody else I know. If anybody's read The Langoliers, the hero in that book was a little blind girl. If you've read Black House, which is the sequel to Talisman, the radio DJ is blind in that book, and he is also the hero. Good for Stephen King.
Joey, thank you so much for all this. It's great having you on Blind
pleasure,
Abilities.
Sir.
Be sure to check the links in the show notes. Go check all this out. It's great music. I've just been playing it, and it's really cool to just turn to your Amazon device and just say, hey, play Joey Stuckey. And boom, here comes a whole playlist of your music, and it's really good.
And Jeff, bless you, my friend. I'm so glad to have met you, and I look forward to staying in good touch. And I hope I'll be up there to be your area and play sometime soon.
If you're not, we'll come and find you and listen to you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right.
This concludes Jeff's interview with Joey. What a great interview, don't you agree? We'd like to thank Joey Stuckey for taking time out of his busy days to chat with Jeff. You can find more information about Joey Stuckey on his website. That's www.joeystuckey.com, and that's JoeyStuckey.com. Check him out on YouTube. There's dozens of really good videos, music clips, and all kinds of other funny videos. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.
When we share
what we see through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap between
the limited expectations and the realities
of blind ability.
The realities of blind abilities.
For more podcasts with a blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities. Download our app from the App Store, blindabilities, that's 2 words, or send us an email at info@blindabilities.com. Thanks for listening.